This week on Vice, the rise of well-armed militias in America.
Go! You are a politician wanting to sell out my freedom and my liberty. You are my enemy. End of story. We have to get the federal government out of our way.
And then, fishing our oceans. Today. Signify something.
He learned while he was serving.
Everyone's just wheeling like crazy to get more and more hooks in.
Since Obama's election, his administration has been portrayed as anti-gun. Whereas in fact, gun production has more than doubled in the past 10 years. There's also been a corresponding rise of so-called patriot groups that fear not only the erosion of the Second Amendment, but also the expansion of his federal powers. In an effort to understand this phenomenon better, we sent Gianna Taboni to investigate.
So there are about 25, 30 cars, big trucks mostly, all caravanning to this huge ranch where a bunch of 3%ers are going to do military training. There are over 800 active anti-government patriot groups nationwide. One such group, the 3%ers, claims that their network includes up to 25,000 members across all 50 states. They derive their name from their belief that only 3% of the population took up arms against the British during the Revolutionary War. Today, I'll be training with their Colorado chapter.
Basically, we're here to do a little bit of reconnaissance. We have a hill, we need to see what's on the other side of it. If we should see any movement, we'll go ahead and do more of a wedge formation so that we can cover more ground, have more eyes, and if need be, worst case scenario, more rifles on target.
Alpha Bravo team, possible contact in ravine 500 meters to your east.
So I think we just nailed the double B formation. The guy who's instructing us, he's former military, so this is all stuff that he learned while he was serving. In fact, almost all the instructors and most of the participants have a military background, including former Marine and 3% co-founder, Mike Morris.
All right, let's give you an AR. Got full 25 round mag, okay?
Okay.
A lot of the Patriot movement started with gun rights. As faith in the government continues to erode, people are starting to want to go back to the real intention of the Constitution. The original intent of the Second Amendment was that the American citizen would be as armed and as prepared as the government itself.
Go!
All right, you killed that dead.
There's always been a lot of fear with the Obama administration. He's already proven that he's willing to do whatever he has to do to go after the Second Amendment. But with a well-armed population, it makes being a tyrannical government dangerous.
I guess people will wonder, why are you training? Give me a scenario where you would take those skills and put them to work.
Yeah, I don't know how deep I want to go into that question. We train for the day that we hope never comes. The Patriot movement's in every city, in every town. There's millions of folks out there. If there's ever a time when the only people that we can rely on are ourselves, we're prepared for it.
Like many other political movements, the Patriots rely on all forms of modern media to get their message out, particularly the extremely popular conservative radio. I tagged along as Mike and his co-founder Mitch Narum appeared on Denver's Freedom 560, which airs on Colorado's KLZ, a conservative radio station.
And we are back. This is Freedom 560. I'm your host, Ken Clark. We have Mike and Mitch. We also have Gianna Taboni.
Nailed it.
Nailed it! KLZ 560 is all about restoring the Constitution, the law of the land. For that, they paint us into corners. They call us bigots. They call us racists. They call us all these wonderful names.
That's the stigma. People look at us and think, well, that guy's crazy. It couldn't possibly be that you're wanting to go back to restore a certain way of life.
Who makes up this patriot movement?
I mean, they're everyday people. They're your neighbors. It's anybody that believes in the Constitution and protecting and supporting those rights.
I used to think that getting a Republican elected was enough. It's not. We all know that now. They had to lie, cheat, and steal to get Obamacare passed. The EPA has run amok. We've got problems on the border. We've got ISIS.
Do you think that ISIS has crossed the border?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you bet. The Department of Homeland Security has already reported that they are tracking ISIS terrorists inside the United States, Mike.
Do you think it's any coincidence that they're taking these illegals and they're putting them in red states?
Oh, no. This whole amnesty movement is about nothing but votes. If you are a politician wanting to sell out my freedoms and my liberty, you are my enemy. End of story. We have to get the federal government out of our way.
To find out more about what's behind this most recent surge in popularity of the Patriot movement, I spoke to Mark Potok of the Southern Poverty Law Center, an organization that monitors extremist groups throughout the country.
The boom in patriot groups was pretty much a direct response to the election of Obama and what that election represented. The big demographic change happened in this country. A very significant slice of the population saw this as a terrible thing and felt that their country had been taken from them. Patriot militia groups in particular grew by some 800+%, from about 150 groups to more than 1,360 groups in the course of 4 years. This is a world that really worships weapons, weaponry, and fighting. And their idea is that the government is somehow every day becoming more tyrannical. It's easy to kind of laugh these groups off, but we ignore the threat from the American domestic radical right at our peril.
In fact, there have already been a number of serious confrontations between the radical right and the federal government over the past few years. The most well-known was in April of 2014, when a dispute between a rancher and a federal agency quickly escalated into an armed standoff. Cliven Bundy's family has owned a ranch near Bunkerville, Nevada since 1948. He's been at odds with the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, for more than 20 years for grazing his cattle on federal land without permits or paying fees. Finally, it came to a head.
There's been a battle, you can call it a range war, on the West for probably maybe 100 years. The battle is, who owns this land? The federal government has no business dealing with the land or any of the laws here in the state of Nevada.
And how did that battle escalate in April?
It escalated to the point that the United States said, okay, Cliven Bundy is trespassing on our land. He's not paying grazing fees, so we're going to seize and impound his cattle.
After the cattle roundup, local Bundy supporters began to protest. But when a video of police using dogs and tasers to attack the protesters was posted online, many more like-minded and well-armed Americans descended on Clark County, Nevada.
We had some militia, and they were supporting we the people. We don't like them to treat us like England was treating us back 200 years ago. We're not ever going to allow that again.
We're going to go up the freeway. We're going to block the freeway. Get it going, cowboys. Let's go get it back.
And an armed standoff between Bundy's supporters and the BLM began. Former Marine Buddha Cavalier is the head of security for the Bundy family and was there on the day of the standoff. Can you just illustrate for us what actually happened on that bridge? What did it look like?
We had both freeways blocked off all the way out pretty much to Vegas and pretty much all the way into Utah. The BLM was on this side facing that way. We had citizens facing this way. Right up on the ridge over here is a flat spot where they had their sniper. We had counter snipers on top of the bridge. Tactically speaking, we had superior ground in the art of warfare. The high ground usually wins. Should a firefight have erupted, it would have been a bloodbath on both ends, but it would have shown once again what Americans are willing to do for their liberties.
Ultimately, it was the federal agents who backed down.
Well, they went ahead and wrapped it up and left. They tucked tail and run too. A few minutes after it all ended, you saw a herd of cattle walking through there, little baby calves and mom cows and dad cows and everybody going back home.
What did it mean for you guys when they backed down?
It was a victory for this stage of the battle. There's still a war going on for liberty and freedoms that need to be addressed.
Do you think there are patriots that are willing to die for this movement?
Oh yeah. Anybody who is willing to show up out here and go against tyrannical government force shows that there are people out there that will go to that level.
The legacy of the Bundy Ranch is going to be felt for many years to come.
Daryl Johnson is a former senior domestic terrorism analyst for the Department of Homeland Security.
That served not only as a recruitment tool to bring more people into these extremist causes, that became a radicalization though, because they did take arms against the federal government and got away with it.
This victory over federal authorities emboldened the movement and even inspired some of its more extreme members to carry out even deadlier actions.
One such example of radicalized individuals from the Bundy Ranch is Jared and Amanda Miller, who stood side by side with the militia and repelled the federal government.
I really don't want violence toward them, but if that's the language they want to speak, we'll learn it.
A few weeks later, they would carry out a violent attack in Las Vegas, Nevada, killing 2 police officers and draping them with the Gadsden Minutemen flag. And there are many Jared and Amanda Millers who were at the Bundy Ranch who are now back in their communities. We've had a number of recent domestic terrorism attacks that no one even realizes has happened. For example, the NAACP office in Colorado was recently bombed. We've had police officers shot in Florida and Pennsylvania under political causes. There have been a number of these attacks that the media doesn't follow up on to see what the motivation was, and so a lot of people don't realize that these are terrorist attacks.
But it's not just confrontations like the Bundy standoff that's fueling the growth of patriot groups. President Obama's policies regarding illegal immigration and border control have been perceived as so lenient that it's only further galvanized the movement. Now, many have taken border security into their own hands.
They look at it as a foreign invasion, taking away jobs, taking away our rights. This feeds into the cause of the militia to organize and to train. And so a number of vigilante groups formed along the border of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico.
This is basically where the fence stops at what we call a pedestrian walk around. It only goes about 2 miles, and then after that it's wide open. With the amnesty that's going on, basically it's just opened up the border. Obama's taking them from here and putting them all over the country. We have no idea where they're going. We're finding out a lot of these people are criminals and from terrorist countries.
You think there are terrorists coming over?
Absolutely. I mean, we have the ISIS problem going on. They've stated they're going to come to our country. Obama's just made it basically easy for anybody, just wherever you're from in the world, you can just come here and just walk right in and start living here.
Our government's not committed to anything but putting money in their pockets, in my opinion. This is a duty more than a job.
It's at the point where the federal government won't even act to secure its own nation's borders. The common citizen is just going to have to take over for himself.
If the government is no longer doing what it's supposed to do, then the people have the power to make the changes necessary. We're prior service veterans who wants to get involved and wants to help and wants to do what's right. And now that we're no longer under contract with them and have to follow their orders, they're afraid of what we might do.
We have the right to put an end to it. Our operations are anywhere from 20 to 100 people, and it's growing faster than we can keep track of it.
This militia's numbers have grown so much that they're now able to send out additional teams that patrol throughout the night.
Alpha, this is Bravo. Bravo is advancing to your position.
As more militias arrive heavily armed at the border, federal authorities have grown increasingly concerned.
Today we find ourselves at a white-hot period of extremism in America. Due to the sheer size of the patriot movement, the fact that we've got hundreds of thousands of people that subscribe to these extremist belief systems, the military training that they have, and the capability, the massive amounts of firearms and explosives, I consider them one of the greatest threats here in the country.
In fact, a recent study funded by the Department of Homeland Security found that local law enforcement considers extreme anti-government groups 2 of the top 3 greatest terrorist threats to America.
Patriot groups inspire people to carry out violence in the name of a political cause. We've had police officers that have been killed, we've had federal buildings targeted, we've had mosques burned. Individuals become radicalized to the point of carrying out acts of terrorism, and we're long overdue for a mass Catholic cruising attack.
In recent years, record levels of overfishing have pushed many species of sea life to the brink of extinction. And one of the hardest hit the shark.